Greetings. It's been too long. It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you. This is Jason Johnson and Jason Johnson's YouTube. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about this week. So, thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'm loving all the attention that we get. We've had some really amazing conversations. I've seen a couple of things sort of pop off after our last conversation, which is really cool. For those of you where this is your first time going to the Jason Johnson YouTube page, you were seeing this on Blue Sky. You were seeing this on Twitter, because I ain't never going to change the name. You're seeing this on Instagram or some other social media. This is only going to run for about a minute. I'm going to explain what my three main topics are, and then the full discussion is on my YouTube page, Dr. Jason Johnson, Dr. Jason Johnson. Go check me out there. That's where we have our full conversations, and I respond to almost every single person's comment. So this week, three things is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to start with ZOHRAN MAMDANI. I'm going to start with this Democratic Socialist mayoral candidate, what he actually means, why so many people have been talking about it, and what most people who you see talking about him on television are getting wrong. That's the first thing, ZOHRAN MAMDANI. Number two, we're going to talk about Angel Reese, Clarke, RG3, and why the heck people keep talking about these people without actually talking about the WNBA. That's topic number two. And then topic number three, spoiler alert, not really spoilers, depends on what time you're actually seeing this video. I'm going to give you my opinion of the new Superman movie. And I have a lot of thoughts. So, let's get started. Topic number one, ZOHRAN MAMDANI. So, here's the thing. Most people, if you watch any kind of news or been paying any kind of attention to the world one way or another, you've seen 50 million bits of coverage about 33-year-old ZOHRAN MAMDANI. He is a Democratic Socialist. He is running for mayor of New York City. He beat Cuomo. He beat Adams. You've seen this storyline with the New York Times writing an article about him, saying that he called himself African American and Ugandan and whatever. I will say this up front. The New York Times article was absolute garbage. I will say that as a Black American person, I don't give a crap that this guy put down African American. He was born in Africa. He was born in Uganda. He can call himself an African American. He called himself African American. He called himself Indian. And then he specifically said he's Ugandan. It's a non-story. The real story is about the fact that the New York Times continues to demonstrate itself at many levels. This is not an attack on everybody at the New York Times, but demonstrates itself at many levels as having not just a right-wing bias, but having a tremendous amount of hypocrisy in what they do and do not choose to cover. A year ago, they were given access to all sorts of information from a hack by, we suspect, the Iranian government about J.D. Vance around the time that he was going to be Trump's vice presidential nominee. And the New York Times said, hey, we can't publish this because it was hacked information. Okay. And yet, when it comes to ZOHRAN MAMDANI, who is a guy who's just running for mayor and isn't even mayor yet of that city, they had no problem using hacked information from Columbia University, right? So this is a FERPA violation to go into school records from 20-something years ago that was provided by a right-wing white nationalist. And the New York Times didn't even really want to cover that. That's the bigger story, right? But the larger thing I want to say about ZOHRAN MAMDANI is this, because I think there's a lot of talk that you see on TV right now, a lot of political pundits saying, well, he means this and he means that, and what does this mean to Democrats and everything else like that. I tell you all this all the time because it's very important to me. Look for people who are actual experts. You got all these people who are talking about New York. They don't know nothing about New York. They don't live in New York. They don't know about New York City's ranked choice voting. They don't know anything about how the past mayor got elected or previous mayors got elected. Most people talking about ZOHRAN MAMDANI don't know anything. They really don't. It makes the coverage very stupid. It makes the coverage very bad. I haven't talked about him a lot. Why? Because I'm not a New Yorker, right? and I get a lot of my information from people who are New York experts. Ellie Mistal, who lives there, Dr. Christina Greer. I talked to Clay Kane. I talk to people who are my friends, who are my colleagues, who actually know something about the city, know something about his actual chances of getting elected. So that's one big thing. But I want to say this, because this is an important sort of closing way to understand him. Is ZOHRAN MAMDANI a future indicator of where the Democratic Party wants to go? Because that's really the big conversation. And I would say, no, he's not. And that's not a criticism. He's running for mayor of New York City. He might be good for New York. But you remember the last time that all the national news, all the main networks were talking about this New York mayor might be indicative of where the Democratic Party needs to go? You know who that was? It was Eric Adams. They were all saying that Eric Adams is the way of the future. And now Eric Adams can't even win a darn primary election against some 33-year-old guy who's relatively new on the scene. Stop treating New York like it's indicative of the United States of America. Somebody who can run for mayor of New York and even run that city successfully couldn't necessarily run Chicago, couldn't necessarily run Miami, couldn't necessarily run Houston, couldn't necessarily be the governor of California. How about we let ZOHRAN MAMDANI just be ZOHRAN MAMDANI? And if the citizens of that state and the citizens of that city decide that he makes a great mayor, then fantastic. Then our next conversation will be, how do we protect him from an administration, a regime that wants to denaturalize him and kick him out of the country because he has the audacity to be Muslim and young and care about New York City. So that's topic number one. Topic number two. Oh gosh, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clarke, and RG3. Now I'm gonna make this simple for those of you. You want to go check Instagram, go check Twitter. You can go find out this story. It's being covered everywhere. So the long and short of it is, RG3, Robert Griffin III, who is a former quarterback for the Washington Commanders. They were not the Commanders initially, but I'm not going to say that old name. Who has been let go by ESPN and kind of runs his own kind of YouTube channel one way or another. He retweeted a racist image of Angel Reese, who is a power forward for the Chicago Sky, which is a WNBA team. He retweeted a racist picture of her. And then he retweets the racist picture and he says, hey, this is racist. This is so bad. We shouldn't do this. And then he doubles down on the fact that Angel Reese doesn't like Caitlin Clarke, who's the white woman who's super duper popular and plays for the Indiana Fever, all this stuff. Anyway, so all these people are getting involved, and all these people are saying, oh, Robert Griffin III, you know, you're this, you're a cornball brother, as Rob Parker called him years ago. You ain't a real black man. You got a white wife, and you're terrible, and you interview. Here's the thing. Here's the way to cut through this story and understand it in a very basic way. And I'll tell you this because I was getting all sorts of phone calls and texts and everything else like that from my friends about it. And I was like, I don't generally care. And here's why. Here's why you don't really need to care about this. Because 82% of the conversation about the WNBA that comes from social media is not from people who are actually fans of basketball. Let me repeat that. 82% of the conversation about the WNBA that generates from Twitter, that comes off of TikTok, is not from people who actually know anything about basketball. And they certainly don't know anything about the WNBA. I bet you RG3 can't even tell you what the record of the Indiana Fever is, which is the team that Caitlin Clarke plays for. I bet you he can't tell you what the record is of the Chicago Sky, the team that Angel Reese plays for. He doesn't know. All he knows is that you've got a black woman and a white woman who appeared to have a rivalry when they played in college, which at this point is 2 years ago, and that has drawn all sorts of grifter culture people to the sport in order to scream and yell and use Angel Reese, but primarily Caitlin Clarke, as an avatar to express whatever racist beliefs they have. That's what it is. If you actually care about basketball, there's great basketball to be watched, right? You can watch Audra Wilson and the Aces, and you can watch the New York Liberty, and you can watch the Sparks. There's good basketball to be watched in the WNBA. You don't always have to be distracted by whatever pathetic, problematic, self-loathing black people want to talk about it because they want to cape for Caitlin Clarke. And you don't have to listen to the Clay Travises of the world and all those sorts of bigots, those culture race grifters who, again, don't care about basketball. All they care about is getting your engagement. And that's the thing you have to understand. None of this is really about basketball. It's about engagement. It's about racism. It's about sexism. So whether or not RG3 says something crazy, I don't care. I don't care that Ryan Clark responded. I think Ryan Clark runs an interesting podcast, The Pivot. I listen to it from time to time. But the conflict itself is a distraction from the fact that you have two women who are excellent athletes, and rather than discussing their athleticism or any real rivalry on the court or any real competition on the court, everybody wants to do this pantomime game. And the last thing I'll say about this with Angel Reese, Caitlin Clarke, and RG3 and why this is important, this is all a test. What do I mean by a test? It's not a culture Rorschach test. It's just a test. This is a test because there is actually a bigger story dealing with the WNBA that not a lot of people are talking about. And that will happen this coming October, right? They won't even be playing. October is actually when the NBA season starts. The collective bargaining agreement for the WNBA is coming up. And I will tell you this. I want to see if any of these men screaming about it will actually cover that, because you've got a league that has skyrocketed in popularity over the last 2 or 3 years because of the anticipation of Juju Smith The play of Paige Buchers, Aja Wilson selling best-selling books, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clarke, who sells out arenas wherever it is she goes. It's the most powerful the WNBA has been probably in its history since its inception. And you've literally got a league where a lot of these teams treat women getting pregnant with less sensitivity and less labor empathy than they do when somebody sprains their ankle. There's going to be a serious fight in the WNBA this fall about their collective bargaining, labor, salary, pay, and the whole bit. And that is a real story. Not whatever black man is caping for whatever white woman or attacking whatever black woman. That's not news. That's garbage. It's engagement bait, and it's meant to get you. So, last thing is this. We got to talk about Superman. The new Superman movie that came out on July 11th. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now. If you have not seen the movie, I'm going to talk about plot points. Y'all know I get into my nerd and blurred bag, so I'm going to be talking about this. So if you suddenly don't want to know, then fine. I guess you can change and come back. I'm going to tell you about the movie, but not the whole thing, because I'm not going to go plot by plot, minute by minute, right? Number two, I always say this for my bona fides. Look, I'm wearing my 80s Superpower Friends Cyborg short. I got all of my DC Funkos. I got Static Shock. I got Cyborg, Lightning, Starfire, Batwoman. I know DC Comics, right? I know a lot about DC Comics. I probably have read an equal amount of Marvel and DC Comics. So I'm going to say this about Superman. First and foremost, it's not a great movie. It's not. It is a good movie. It's a B-ish movie. I saw it the first time that I could, and the further I get away from the film, the less I like it. I'm biased, right? Not just because I know DC and I know DC Comics, but the fact of the matter is, like, they were running on TNT during the day. They were doing a marathon of the old Superman movies, and they had Superman 2, which is with Christopher Reeve, which was one of my favorite movies of all time. Not even a superhero movie. That's a great movie, and it has these two amazing scenes, right? If you've ever seen Superman 2, which is an awesome movie, there's a scene where, the villain says, kneel before Zod, and Superman puts up his hand and takes his hand and then crushes it. And you're all like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened, because he switched the powers. It's a great movie. In the end, he goes back and beats up all these people who had beaten him up when he had no powers. Like, Superman 2 is an amazing movie. And I say that because I went into the new Superman with David Cornsweet and New Woman playing Lois and everything else like that, hoping for at least one or two of those moments. And there are none. The biggest issues with this new Superman movie are not the fact that it's too woke. Ignore D. Kane, ignore all the right-wing grifters who just hate the movie, who hated it because they hadn't seen it. The problem with the new movie is not that the actors are bad. I actually think most of the actors are good. The problem with the new movie is they just trying to do too much. There is so much happening in this movie, and nothing ever gets a chance to breathe. It's just thing. And I'm a comic book guy. I understand most of this stuff, but they're constantly throwing things at the screen over and over again. Nothing gets a chance to breathe. We don't get to see enough of Clarke and Lois's relationship. We don't get to see enough of Jimmy Olsen and why he makes any sense. Perry White, they absolutely waste Perry White in this movie. The action sequences are amazing, but they very seldom have any emotional resonance, which is going to go to my final point on this. And worst of all, and I do say worst of all, Nicholas Hoult, who I think is a great actor and who I've enjoyed in a lot of different things, this is probably the worst depiction of Lex Luthor I have ever seen on screen. Bad writing, even though he has great acting. What he does doesn't make any sense. This is not any version of Lex Luthor that's actually interesting to me. The man is crying. Lex Luthor is supposed to be cocky and arrogant and frustrated with the fact that he can't seem to outsmart this crazy, goody two-shoes person that is Superman. He's not supposed to be this sort of crying, pretend super bad guy. And some people are going to say, no, it's for a new generation. I don't care what generation it is. Kevin Spacey plays Lex Luthor different. Jesse Eisenberg played Lex Luthor different. I don't think Lex Luthor has to be played one way. But the way you do play him needs to be authentic. And if your main villain doesn't make any sense one way or another, or doesn't strike fear in my heart, or doesn't make me engage, then your entire movie is weaker. Last thing I'll say is this, because I want to point out, I could talk about this for a long time, but I want to make this clear to those people who are going to watch this and enjoy it. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying the new Superman movie. When I tell you that the movie fails to let any moment breathe, you have to think about the final battle in this movie. And this is a spoiler, right? I haven't said spoilers yet, but this is a spoiler. At the end of this movie, you end up finding out that Ultraman and the Hammer of Baravia is actually a clone of Superman. And then they have this big fight at the end. And I'm sitting here watching this. I'm like, this should be a big reveal. This should be like the most important. Oh my gosh, this connects to how they got into the Fortress of Solitude and everything else like that. And there's nothing to it. He just fights his own clone. There's no real discussion of it. There's no like, oh my gosh. And you're talking about Superman. This is the guy who wants to find peace. This is a guy who earlier in the film didn't want to kill a giant kaiju. He wanted to find a way to save it. So when he encounters his own clone, when he encounters what is essentially his brother, when he encounters, one of the only Kryptonians left, there's no moment there. There's no conversation where he's looking at himself and saying, I know that if you're a part of me, then you can fight back against Lex Luthor. It's just fight after fight after fight after fight after fight. And I'll say this sort of in conclusion. Look, if you like James Gunn's kinds of movies, if you like Guardians of the Galaxy, if you like The Suicide Squad, and if you like Peacemaker, then you'll probably love this movie. I don't. I've never really liked James Gunn stuff. I think most of it is way too frat boy, bro-ish. Kind of reminds me of Barstool Sports or like a Maxim magazine in the mid to late 90s. I don't really like this stuff. I didn't like any of the 3 Guardians of the Galaxy's movies. The first Suicide Squad was completely forgettable. The second one with Idris Elba was absolutely excellent. I thought that Creature Commandos on HBO Max was not very good. So if you like his shtick, then this is great for you. If you don't like James Gunn's shtick, and if you actually want a decent Superman movie that gives you something emotional to react to, as opposed to just spectacle on the screen and wasted performances by the Superman, by Corn Sweet and by Lois Lane, then you'll love it. But for those of us who actually care about the real thing, it's a B movie that I'll probably rewatch when it goes on HBO Max. So those are 3 things. First off, Zohran Mamdani, yo, chill. Let New York be New York. Let's stop pretending that he's a bigger deal than he is. And we can talk later about whether he means anything for the Democrats, but he doesn't. Number 2, don't be distracted by nonsense. There's basketball to be watched, not just racist nonsense by RG3 and the like. And number 3, Superman is a meh movie. It's going to make a lot of money, but you know what? Talking about how much money a movie makes is kind of like saying this rapper is good because they've got album sales. That's not an argument that anyone wants to stand by that would justify people like Drake. Anyway, thank you so much. This is Jason Johnson's YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and share. I'll talk to you soon.